the night sky had always been a comfort to Mira Hayes. A quiet reminder that there was so much more to discover beyond Earth's borders. But tonight, the stars felt far from reassuring. A hum filled the air, soft at first, like the distant rumble of thunder. Mira looked up, instinctively squinting through the window of the command center. A bright light blinked into view, growing steadily in size until it could no longer be dismissed as an anomaly. She tapped her earpiece. "Status report," Mira ordered, her voice sharp but steady. "Unknown craft, Captain." "It just appeared," Lieutenant Jalen Grant's voice crackled over the comm. "We've never seen anything like it." Mira leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The radar screens blinked with increasing intensity, a disorienting signal that pinged erratically. A shape appeared on the screen, a silvery vessel, sleek and unyielding, unlike anything humanity had ever crafted. It loomed impossibly large in the upper atmosphere, then shifted with a precision that made the air itself seem to ripple. Jalen's tone carried a hint of disbelief. "It's not moving like a ship should. It's like it's phasing through space itself." Mira's hand gripped the edge of the console, heart pounding. "Can we make contact?" "Sending a message now, but there's no response," Jalen replied, his voice tinged with frustration. "It's almost as if they're waiting for us to make the first move." Mira exhaled slowly, her mind running calculations, possibilities, dangers. She had faced countless military operations and tactical decisions, but this was unprecedented. A sudden flash of light outside the window interrupted her thoughts. It was brief but blinding, the kind that made her instinctively squint. The ship had vanished from radar. Gone. Without a trace. Jalen cursed under his breath. What the hell just happened? Before she could respond, the comms crackled again, this time not with static, but with a voice. "Alien. Clear. Pleading. We are not your enemies. We seek only help." The words hung in the air for a heartbeat, and then, as if they had never been spoken, the room fell into dead silence. Mira's breath caught. She exchanged a glance with Jalen, who was already scanning the system for any signs of manipulation, any sign that this could be a trick. "I repeat, we are not your enemies," the voice continued, this time softer, desperate. "Our people are dying. You are our only hope. Please, we do not wish to conquer, only to survive." The words hit harder than they should have. She didn't know who this was, alien or otherwise, but something about the tone, the rawness, made her hesitate. Her mind screamed to be cautious, but the flicker of emotion in the alien voice was undeniable. "Where are you?" Mira demanded, her voice cutting through the air, more forceful now. "Who are you?" There was a moment of hesitation, a soft pause before the voice returned. "We are Xyrians. A dying race. We are begging for assistance." Mira sat back in her chair, hands clenching the armrests. This was real. This wasn't some hoax or digital interference. A race of beings, from beyond the stars, were asking for help, no, begging for it. "Get me in contact with Earth's Council. Now," Mira barked. Within minutes, a virtual meeting room buzzed to life, displaying holographic projections of Earth's key leaders and military advisors. Most faces appeared skeptical, a few were alarmed, and several were downright hostile. "I don't care what they claim," General Harlow snapped from his seat. "We have no idea who these people are or what they want. We need to be cautious, Mira." "We can't afford to dismiss them outright," Mira countered, holding her ground. "They're asking for help, not for war." "Or a distraction," Jalen muttered from his post, scanning the alien ship's movements. "How do we know this isn't some sort of trick?" Mira turned to face him. "We don't know anything for certain. But I'm not ready to assume the worst just because they're different." The debate continued, voices raised in a clamor of suspicion, fear, and, yes, curiosity. But Mira knew the decision ultimately fell on her shoulders. This was her responsibility, her call. She took a deep breath. "Send a message back. We'll offer limited support. If they turn hostile, we'll be ready. What kind of limited support are we talking about, Captain? General Harlow asked sharply. Communication first, she replied, her eyes fixed on the holographic map of the alien craft. We need to understand their situation before we make any decisions. As the meeting continued, Mira found herself caught between the weight of duty and the gnawing uncertainty of what lay ahead. Earth had never encountered anything like this. The consequences of this first contact would ripple across the entire planet. Could humanity trust a dying alien race, or would this be the beginning of a deadly invasion? A shiver ran down her spine as the alien ship hovered silently over the Earth. Every instinct screamed at her to be careful. Yet, in her heart, Mira knew that there was no turning back now. The future was in motion, and humanity would either rise to meet it, or fall before it. And whatever came next, it would change everything. The council chamber buzzed with the energy of urgency. Mira Hayes stood at the head of the table, listening to the barrage of opinions from the leaders. The holographic map of the Xerian vessel hovered in the center, its light casting long shadows across the darkened room. Earth's brightest minds had gathered, but a clear direction remained elusive. General Harlow's voice cut through the murmurs. Captain, we cannot afford to entertain the possibility of a peaceful alliance. These creatures claim they're on the brink of extinction, yet they've come to us with nothing but vague promises and unproven technology. How can we trust them? Mira clenched her jaw. She could feel the weight of the world pressing on her, but something in her gut told her that their desperation was not a deception. Their technology is unlike anything we've seen, General. We can't dismiss them outright, especially when they've already shown us the capacity for kindness. We need more time to analyze their intentions. Jalen Grant, her ever-skeptical lieutenant, stood at the far side of the room, arms crossed. His face was tight with concern. They've shown us nothing but a message. What we need is proof. Proof that they're not just using us to buy time. For all we know, they're setting us up for an invasion. Mira turned to Jalen, meeting his gaze. We're already at a tipping point, Jalen. An alien race is asking for help. Humanity cannot afford to turn its back on that, no matter the risk. Risk? Jalen muttered, his eyes narrowing. And what if that risk comes back to bite us? What happens when they're not just asking for help, but for control? The tension between them was palpable, but before Mira could respond, a sharp voice interrupted. I agree with Jalen, said Dr. Lena Moreau, the head of Earth's Scientific Research Division. Until we have a better understanding of their technology and their true motivations, we cannot afford to extend any aid. Our people are not an experiment. Mira felt a knot tighten in her chest. The room had quickly become divided, the tension thick with distrust. We'll send a small team aboard their ship, Mira finally declared, raising her hand to silence the room. I'll lead the mission. We'll assess the Xerians firsthand. If there's any sign of deception, we pull back immediately. Absolutely not, Harlow barked, slamming his fist on the table. You can't just let her go, Jalen interrupted, his voice surprisingly calm. We need someone who understands diplomacy and strategy. If anyone can get us the answers we need, it's her. Mira blinked, taken aback by Jalen's support. He had been vehemently opposed to the idea of engaging with the aliens, and now, he was silently conceding the point. She gave him a brief nod, her heart racing, but the tension in the room was far from over. Fine. But I'll be sending backup, Harlow insisted, his voice hardening. We don't know what's out there. I'll need full access to their systems, Mira replied, her gaze shifting to the map again, her mind already racing ahead. If we're going to trust them, we need full transparency. The Xerian ship was a silent, gleaming monolith in Earth's orbit, the edges of its form reflecting the sunlight in such a way that it almost seemed to shimmer, as though it existed both here and somewhere else entirely. Mira stood in the hangar bay, staring up at it through the massive windows. Her chest tightened as the shuttle's engines hummed to life. Jalen approached, his expression unreadable. Are you sure about this? Mira turned to him, meeting his worried eyes. I've been sure about a lot of things in my life, Jalen. But right now, I can only trust my instincts. Something about this feels different. We're not just looking at technology. We're looking at a plea for survival. Jalen sighed, stepping closer. I just don't want you walking into a trap. Mira gave him a small, wry smile. I'll be cautious. You have my word. Before he could say more, a loud chime signaled the shuttle's departure. Mira glanced over her shoulder, then back at Jalen. The faintest flicker of something, regret, or maybe fear, passed through his eyes before he masked it. Stay safe, Mira, he said quietly. I will, she answered, turning toward the shuttle's hatch. As the doors closed, the hum of the engines intensified. Mira strapped herself in, fingers trembling as she keyed in the sequence for launch. The shuttle jerked forward, cutting through the atmosphere toward the alien craft. The inside of the Xerian ship was nothing like she expected. The air hummed with an almost tangible energy, a vibration that reverberated through her bones. The walls were made of some iridescent material that shifted in color as she moved, reflecting hues she couldn't name. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft whir of machinery. Xerath, the Xerian leader, awaited her at the central docking bay. His figure was slender and tall, his features sharp and angular, like an artist's rendition of grace itself. His translucent skin shimmered faintly in the low light. His eyes, large, dark, and deep, held a mixture of hope and sorrow. Captain Hayes, he greeted, his voice calm yet strained. I am glad you've come. Mira nodded, unsure of how to begin. You said your people were dying. But you've yet to explain what that means. You've offered no evidence beyond your word. Why should we trust you? Xerath's eyes darkened, and for a moment, the confident facade cracked. The truth is not so simple, Captain. Our plight is tied to something, far older than our race. And I fear that if we do not act soon, we will not be the last. Myra's heart quickened. What do you mean? What's happening? Xerath hesitated, the weight of his words pressing on him. There is a force at work, an ancient enemy. And it is coming for us all. Myra's mind spun, the implications of his statement reverberating deep within her. An ancient enemy. Her instincts screamed that they had just crossed a threshold, one that would lead them down a path from which there might be no return. The air felt colder now, the hum of the ship growing louder. Something was coming. And it would change everything. The hum of the Xerian ship had become a constant undercurrent, vibrating through Myra's chest. Despite her best efforts to focus on the mission, a subtle unease had begun to crawl beneath her skin. Xerath's cryptic words echoed in her mind, an ancient enemy, a force unlike anything we've faced before. She couldn't help but wonder, what did that truly mean? And why, of all the races in the galaxy, had the Xerians chosen humanity for aid? Mira stood in the ship's central chamber, its walls shifting between translucent and opaque, pulsing with an alien energy. The room itself seemed alive, as though the very structure of the ship was a sentient entity, guiding them towards something far deeper. Xerath, with his long, delicate fingers tracing patterns in the air, seemed to blend seamlessly with the surroundings. I wish I could offer more assurances, Captain, Xerath said, his voice soft but firm, as though weighed down by untold burdens. But there is little time. Our enemy grows closer by the day. We need more than just your technology. We need your unity. Unity, Mira repeated, her brow furrowing. And you think we'll just rally to your cause without knowing what's at stake? Xerath's eyes met hers, dark and filled with an ancient sorrow. You misunderstand. This is not about conquest. This is about survival. Our people, we were once a thriving civilization. We shared knowledge with those who sought it, gave aid to those in need, and yet, an enemy rose from the dark corners of the galaxy. They devoured our world, erased our history, and now, they come for us all. Mira leaned forward. And who are they? This enemy you keep hinting at? Xerath took a slow breath, his body seeming to sag with the weight of a terrible truth. They are called the Veil, a race older than the stars themselves. They do not conquer in the traditional sense. They erase, consume, and leave nothing but an empty shell. Their motives are beyond comprehension. They take what they want, and when they leave, nothing remains but silence. Myra's stomach twisted. She could feel the urgency in Zaratha's words, the desperation. Yet, part of her hesitated. No one does this without reason. Everyone has an agenda. But the Zarians weren't asking for war, they were asking for something deeper, something more existential. Could they be trusted? Why come to us? Why Earth? She asked. Zarath paused, eyes flickering with hesitation before answering. Because of the Veil's misunderstanding of your species. They do not perceive humanity as a threat. To them, you are a primitive race, one that they can easily wipe away. But I have studied your kind. I know your resilience. I know your capacity to survive against impossible odds. A chill ran through Mira at those words. The Veil thought humanity weak. They underestimated them. But that was exactly why Earth's survival depended on more than just the strength of its military. It was humanity's capacity for strategy, unity, and adaptation that could prove their salvation. We're not weak, Mira said, her voice low but resolute. We don't back down. We fight back. Zaratha's lips curled into a faint smile, though it did little to ease the gravity of the moment. I hope you're right, Captain. Because, as we speak, the Veil are already on their way. They will arrive within days. A strange vibration pulsed through the ship, subtle but unmistakable. Myra's hand instinctively went to her sidearm, the movement sharp and practiced. She exchanged a quick glance with her team, their weapons ready, tension rising in the air. Zarath didn't seem alarmed, though, his demeanor remained eerily calm, almost resigned. Is that them? Mira asked, her voice tight. No, Zarath replied, his tone more distant. That is, something else. The walls of the ship rippled, and the air grew thick with static. A cold gust swept through the chamber, and for a moment, the lights flickered, casting everything in fleeting shadows. Myra's senses went on high alert. We're being watched, Jalen muttered from behind her, his voice barely a whisper. The Zarian's eyes widened, his normally serene expression hardening. No. Not them. But someone knows we're here. Before Mira could ask more, the ship's systems activated, an alert blaring across the chamber. A low, guttural growl echoed through the vessel, vibrating the very walls. The sound was primal, unnerving, something that didn't belong. They've found us, Zarath said softly. I feared this moment would come. The Veil, they know we found allies. Without warning, the ship lurched, and Mira was thrown against the wall. The lights flickered out completely, leaving them in total darkness. The only sound was the distant, thundering growls, now growing closer. They're here, Zarath whispered, his voice tinged with dread. Mira pushed herself off the floor, eyes scanning the darkened room. Jalen moved swiftly to her side, his voice low and steady. Captain, we need to get out of here. Whatever that is, it's not just a warning. It's an attack. Zarath stepped forward, his usual calm gone, replaced with an edge of panic. There is no escape. Not now. The Veil do not allow for that. Myra's pulse quickened. The walls trembled again, louder this time, as something, or someone, pounded against the hull. She could feel it in her bones, the pressure building. The Veil were here. And they weren't just going to wipe them out, they were going to make an example of humanity. We fight back, Mira said, her voice firm, cutting through the panic in the air. And we win. The deep rumble reverberated through the hull again, this time with a force that nearly buckled Myra's knees. The ship groaned as if it were fighting against an invisible force, but the shockwave that followed was unlike anything Mira had felt before. The Veil were here. In the darkness of the chamber, Myra's heartbeat pounded in her ears. Her team was in position, weapons drawn, but the heavy air seemed to press down on them, making every movement feel sluggish. There was no telling what the Veil would throw at them, nothing had prepared them for this. But Mira wasn't one for hesitation. Jalen, she snapped, her voice commanding despite the rising panic. Activate the emergency beacon. Get us back up. Her eyes locked onto the Zirian, who had retreated into the shadows at the far end of the room. Zareth, what are they doing? Why aren't they attacking? Zaretha's voice came to them in a low murmur, a thread of dread weaving through it. They don't need to. They are waiting for something, someone. His expression darkened. You, Captain, must understand, they want your people alive. They want you for the purpose of study, of consumption. You're the next step in their plan. Myra's fingers curled into fists. Consuming humanity. The thought of it sent a wave of heat surging through her chest. She knew one thing for sure now, no one was going to make an example of humanity. Not on my watch, she muttered, gritting her teeth. From behind her, Jalen's voice cut through the tension. Beacon's live. We're not alone out here anymore. Good, Mira said, her eyes scanning the room. The emergency beacon would send a distress signal to any nearby fleets, but even if they were on their way, they wouldn't be here in time to prevent the worst. She had to act now. Suddenly, the air seemed to thicken, as though the walls of the ship themselves were tightening, closing in. Myra's vision blurred for a moment, and then a low growl erupted from the walls, reverberating through her chest. Something, or someone, was moving within the ship. The temperature dropped. They're inside, Jalen said, his voice taut. I don't think the beacon's gonna do us much good now. The lights flickered once more, then went out completely, plunging them into darkness. Myra's breath caught in her throat. The veil. They were inside the ship. A soft hiss of static filled the silence, then the unmistakable sound of something scraping against metal. A figure appeared at the far end of the room, a silhouette that shifted and rippled like smoke. Myra's hand flew to her sidearm, her pulse racing. They're here, Zareth whispered, his voice laced with fear. The veil, they do not come for peace. They come for everything. Do not let them capture you. Mira stepped forward, her boots silent against the cool floor. We're not going down without a fight. Jalen, get the others ready. Zareth stiffened, then hesitated before adding, you must understand, they do not fear death. The veil will not leave survivors if they can help it. I know, Mira said, her voice a low growl. And that's why we're going to show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The air shifted again, and Myra's eyes locked on the moving shape, now fully materializing from the shadows. It wasn't just one being, it was a group, figures cloaked in darkness, their bodies slender and angular. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, pale, shimmering blue that seemed to pierce through to the soul. A voice, sharp and invasive, echoed from the leader of the group, a creature standing at the forefront. You are the humans who dare defy the veil? The words felt like cold tendrils slithering into Myra's mind, freezing her thoughts for an instant. Your resistance is futile. Myra's grip tightened on her weapon, the cold metal biting into her palm. You may think so, but you haven't fought us yet. Her voice didn't waver, but inside, every instinct was screaming. Don't flinch. The veil were unlike anything she had ever faced, creatures of pure malice, their very presence oppressive. But humanity was nothing if not resilient. Zaretha's voice came again, tinged with warning. Captain, they are not like your foes. Do not underestimate their power. Myra's gaze never left the veil leader. I don't intend to. The tension in the air grew unbearable. The veil leader tilted its head, as if sizing up the human defiance before it. Then you will die. All of you. Your people, your world, your pride, it will be erased. The figure raised one elongated arm, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe around it, like a living entity. We will consume everything. For a split second, time seemed to stretch. Mira could feel her heart hammering in her chest, but her resolve did not waver. This is where it ends, she thought, and yet, this is where it begins. You might be able to consume worlds, but you will never break us, Mira said, her voice low, cutting through the dark. Jalen moved into position beside her. Ready, Captain. Then let's make sure they know who they're dealing with. The veil leader's smile widened, but it wasn't one of amusement. It was the smile of a predator, knowing it had cornered its prey. Mira didn't flinch. She met it head-on. And the battle began.